The bride's cousin was flirting very aggressively with my husband, but she tripped and ended up breaking my husband's femurs and ribs. Now she has to live with a guilty conscience forever. This past weekend, we attended a friend's wedding. There was a fairly heavy young woman at our table who was drinking heavily and flirting very aggressively with my husband throughout the evening. I found out later that she was the bride's cousin. He was very polite, but eventually started rebuffing her with decreasingly gentle hints and told her that he was gay and that his husband was sitting right next to him. A bit later, some tables were cleared, and dancing began, leading us to believe we were off the hook. The woman bothering us was dancing with another guy, so we sat at the edge of the improvised dance floor and watched. After a while, however, she had disentangled from her dance partner and was dancing near us with a couple of female friends. As the song ended, she leaned backward in an attempted flourish of sorts and tripped and ended up right in my husband's lap. As I mentioned earlier, his bones are not up to supporting a / 200 pounds weight suddenly dropping on him, and she ended up breaking both of his femurs and one of his ribs. It was a disaster. We had to call an ambulance. He needed surgery on his right leg. He had to stay in the hospital for 4 nights, and he's going to be stuck in bed for a good long while. We do have decent health insurance, but it's looking like we can expect to pay / $3,000 out of pocket for the health care he received. Honestly, we don't have that kind of money lying around. Our friend who got married has been in touch and was extremely apologetic about the situation. He and his new wife were not at fault, and I'd like to drag them through the mud as little as possible. However, I wonder if it is possible to sue the cousin at fault for the medical bills we owe. After an evening of aggressive flirting, I frankly don't believe that she came over to us and then happened to fall exactly in my husband's lap purely by accident. Still, I don't have any proof that it was intentional. I'm certain that she didn't have any malicious intent and that she had no idea that she was going to hurt him so badly by plopping herself on him the way she did. Even if it was purely a drunken stumble, does she bear any liability for the injuries she caused, even if they were unintentional? Neither of us had contacted her since the wedding. We'd never met beforehand, and I don't know quite how to ask a stranger for $1,000 casually. Based on her behavior at the wedding, I suspect she won't be willing to pitch in for medical expenses. Do we have any kind of case against her? Update. My husband contacted a personal injury lawyer shortly after I made the original post, and he said she echoed a lot of the advice we saw on here. She said that he would almost certainly win a case against the drunk cousin, possibly for quite a substantial payout once lost wages and pain and suffering were taken into account. She added, however, that recovery could be a real issue, and the suit might not be worth pursuing if we didn't think the cousin would pay up. She said that he also could have a case under Minnesota's dram shop law against the bride and groom or the bartending service they hired, but he'd likely get a much smaller settlement because of comparative fault laws. I got the name of the bartending service, and they definitely have liquor liability coverage. I learned from the groom that the cousin is a bit of a train wreck in terms of fiscal responsibility and that she's quite unlikely to be willing or able to pay any kind of settlement. So for now, my husband's lawyer is helping him figure out how to bring a case against the bartenders. As I mentioned, it's unlikely that we get the full settlement, but that's completely fine because the numbers she was citing were crazy high once pain and suffering, etc., were brought into play. Even a quite small fraction, if we could recover it, would help a lot. As an aside, the drunk cousin found out that we were considering suing her because she found my husband on Facebook and sent him a rather incoherent message about how the whole situation wasn't her fault because she couldn't have known he had OI, and in fact, was his fault for not telling her. I guess she thinks he should just wear a sign at all times that says I have brittle bones. Please do not sit on me. I thought he should reply eggshell plaintiff, B. But maturity won out at the end of the day, and he didn't respond at all. Otherwise, his fractures are healing well, which is a huge relief, and he's a lot more comfortable than he was the last time I posted. It's a little bit of a bummer that the cousin isn't going to be held accountable for her actions, but at least it's looking likely that we won't be on the hook for the bills we had to pay. Final update. Long story short, we didn't end up suing anyone. The woman responsible was unlikely to be willing or able to pay for any real damages, and Minnesota apparently has fairly strict wage garnishment laws that would prevent us from recouping even legal costs in the foreseeable future. We did also look into suing the company that provided bartending services for the wedding, but ultimately dropped that as well for 2 reasons. Firstly, there's a good chance that we'd lose the case and would then be out legal costs as well as medical expenses. And secondly, it seemed that even if we did win, someone who really wasn't to blame would likely be fired. There is good news though. As someone suggested on the original thread, the couple did have wedding insurance that covered up to $5,000 in expenses for injuries to guests, which did not require establishing fault. We were actually able to get pretty much everything paid for with that without going through the hassle of a lawsuit. It definitely wasn't the kind of payout that a personal injury suit could bring, but we hadn't really been looking to profit from the whole situation anyway, so it turned out fine. Other than the highly unpleasant individual who caused the whole situation, everyone involved has been really wonderful. My husband called the hospital's billing department, and they were very accommodating about deferring payment and reducing costs that they had control over. Intimate knowledge of the hospital's inner workings is one of the major perks of OI, along with the punch card that gets you your 10th surgery free. Also, the lawyer didn't end up charging us for anything even though she spent 3 hours meeting with my husband and presumably some extra billable time on top of that. The bride and groom have also been very helpful with the insurance and legal information and gracious about their wedding reception going south spectacularly. I do wish that there had been some kind of consequences for the cousin beyond public shaming, but I'll just have to hope that every one of her Starbucks orders is slightly wrong for the rest of her life.